Okay, so we'll run that again. Thank you, Alexis. Appreciate that.
Was that just a text?
She's Michael here. Are you sending me the Zoom link or am I joining? I sent him the Zoom link. This is our practitioner. That's
he's getting on right now, and we'll start from the top.
Let me send him
in a minute.
No, you can start now.
I really like your introduction.
Yeah, no, the introduction was solid. So 5-MeO-DMT is, you know what, just let me do this first. Do you want to talk about, we got it.
I don't think it's the right order.
Yeah, it's not the right order.
No.
If we go talking about the experience.
It's okay.
How you doing, Amber?
I'm doing
chat amongst yourself.
Chat amongst myself and me, myself, and I actually see myself on two screens here. So. Hey, everybody. I wish I could see who's with us and I could at least sort of chat with you, but I'm not set up for that. So maybe for the purposes of the podcast, I'm going to make an effort to do that right now. Thank you for being here on time. Let's see, there's this post.
And again, thank you, Alexis. It's almost every time somebody coaches me off a ledge. So okay. I think I got to send this to him.
Here we are. Okay, watch video.
Coaches me off a ledge.
I see Alexis's comments. Thank you. Yes, here we are. Okay. Who else is with us? I see a few eyes. I see Alexis's comments. Thank you.
Oh, you got to turn that down here.
Okay. I know. There's gonna be some feedback.
Who else is with us?
How do I do this? I see a few eyes. I see Alexis's comments. Okay. We're okay now.
All right. So he may need me to send him this link on Signal. Really need a producer. Damn it. All right. So how do I do this?
I wish I could volunteer for you.
Yeah. I have so many damn Zoom accounts.
Okay.
Okay, so this is typically how the first 2 minutes goes of any podcast that I'm ever on. Even if it's not mine, I tend to come in and disrupt the flow of what's normal for people. So
see what's happening here, baby.
But yeah,
as you move the desk, it shakes the camera. It's probably making people sick.
Nobody can see that. You think they can see that?
I can see it.
All right. Anyway, so today we're talking about 5-MeO-DMT. They call it, whoever they is, they call it the God molecule. So DMT is a chemical that your body produces naturally. It's experienced the most when you have when you come through the birth canal, and then before you die. So anybody who's experienced a near-death experience, they describe a similar experience where they're traveling through this tunnel of light. They believe they've talked to whatever their conception of God is, and they come back changed. They feel this oneness, this sense of being that was foreign to them. So I've ever since my ketamine experience in 2008, I'm not afraid to try these experiences and see how far I can get to piercing the veil and being on the other side. I've never done 5-MeO-DMT. I've heard how serious it is. So you got to be prepped when you go in there. You want to be with a practitioner who can, if there's a lot of trauma and you take off running and this person has to tackle you literally, you need that kind of person there, somebody who knows that gig. So you and I tried it for the first time together. It was just kind of post-pandemic when you first got here, and you had never really done any psychedelic before. So I'm gonna get our practitioner in here if you want to talk about your experience.
Okay. I kind of want to wait to share my experience.
Okay, don't share.
But
we'll wait for.
I'll give you a little teaser. It was amazing.
Well, you were brave. You were brave to do it because there's a lot of people who consider themselves spiritual. They are scared to go to that space.
Yeah.
You know, all this stuff can happen to me. Valid, I guess.
Well, I mean, yeah, valid. And everyone has to do their own research and figure out what's for them and what's not for them, and be with people who know what they're talking about and what they're doing and have their own research and their own background. I got introduced to a lot of this stuff through Vince primarily, because he does have what now over 10 years of background therapeutically. And just to be clear too, my experience with DMT wasn't psychedelic at all. And I don't know that that's the case for.
It wasn't, it's not, I didn't get visuals. Yeah. It's not like, so it's not like DMT. DMT, you get more, what do you want to call them? The geometric patterns and the tree of life and that kind of thing. This is really, it's a real visceral ripping your ego out and
specifically the toad.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd really love to share with you about it. It was one of the most magical moments of my life, and it really didn't last very long at all, but I'll never forget it, and I'm changed ever since. And what is it? Mike Tyson was the one who, with Joe Rogan, they're talking about this a lot in sort of the pop culture space lately, and you can find articles in Forbes and some prominent publications very easily. So if you want to just dabble in that way with a Google search, you can.
But definitely look up the Joe Rogan, Mike Tyson interview.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, man, I gotta sign into every different nonsense. So yeah, so Mike Tyson and Joe Rogan kind of popularized this. So it's called toad. Sure. You can call it bufo. It's from the bufo toad. It's native to northern Mexico, and the practitioner will talk more about this when he gets on. But the first time I ever heard about it, I was watching Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson really describes it perfectly. So he's like, yeah, so I never did this before, but so the guy, he's like, you got to smoke it, and when you agree to do it, you're on this ride, right? So I said, fuck it, I'll do it. And so Mike smokes it. He says immediately he started feeling like, you're being ripped away from your physical senses. So he's like, you better stop this right now, motherfucker. I'm going to kill you. And he's going off. And then the guy's like, you're on the train. You got to take it, or something to that effect. And Mike's like, and then I was like, no. Yeah. And I've never been the same ever since. I was like, that's it. That's all I need. I don't need anything more than how Mike Tyson described it to be in on that. So
he's now like a mainstream ambassador for this experience. And I mean, I think it's very personal. I haven't spoken to a lot of people who've done it, so I don't know. Our guests will be able to share a little bit more. Vince had a different experience than I had. Everyone comes to it differently and gets something different out of it as well.
You want to talk about your ayahuasca experience?
Yeah. Well, and then same thing there. So previous to this one, I experienced for the first time an ayahuasca ceremony, and it was really spiritually enlightening and emotionally settling. Like, I came out of it as really a new person, differently than I'm saying with the toad. I was able to process very quickly things that I have been trying to figure out for 10 years. And it was just like skimming all of the crap off the top of the water that's been kind of hard for me to process through with therapy or personal development. And I just kind of got through all of it. I was shown numerous lessons, which were just basically downloaded into my psyche, whole new perspective on just realities of my life. And there was some visual psychedelic elements of it that were fun too. But mainly it was a very deeply personal experience. So you're not just getting on some psychedelic ride like people have spoken about, maybe LSD or things back in the hippie love days. what was that, the age of Aquarius? All of the 60s and 70s, when people were experimenting more with that, and the images we get in pop culture about what that looks like versus now. If you start looking more contemporary examples of what people are experiencing and what they're doing and why they're going about it.
Okay, we got that sent out.
You got it set up?
Yeah, so everyone who knows me and anyone who's followed this show knows that I swear by ketamine. That was the thing that did more for me than any therapist that I'd ever encountered in my life. The birth of my son was odd for me. It was a very positive trauma, but I was feeling something from my son that I'd never experienced, and I didn't know what it was. I knew I loved him. I knew what my conception of love was. I didn't know what I was getting from him, though. There was this feeling that I wanted to run from. So around that time, for whatever reason, I got into quantum physics, really heavy. I was just really soul searching. I was reading anything that interested me. And I was having, I hadn't been diagnosed yet with PTSD. So I was having these flashbacks like 3-4 times a year. And I didn't know what that behavior was. And I'm looking for ways, and I read about ketamine psychedelic therapy. It wasn't legal at the time. So I did it. I did it because for Vinny mainly, I was like, I can't be this and be a dad. I got to figure this out. So I did it, and I had the profound experience. I was ripped out of my body, had an out of body experience. And in retrospect, what the neural pathways that were opened up for me were unconditional love. That's what Vinny was sending me. And I didn't know how to take that, and I can see how my dad, back when I was a kid, very easily could have run from that. I'm going to switch over. We're still on here. I'm going to get the practitioner on, and we'll get down to business. Let's see.
I'm so grateful that you shared your experiences with me, because I've had the opportunity several times to maybe embark on these journeys, and I just wasn't ready. I didn't feel like it was the right time for me to do that. And when you feel that with these things, you just gotta listen to that. And this was precisely the right time for me to do these things.
Yeah, so I gotta send a new link. I don't understand what this Zoom thing is. Where you got, let's see, copy invite link.
We did it before.
Sorry, people. There it is.
Phone call too.
Yeah, no, I'm not answering that. I think I need to get back in the studio. What are the comments now? Are they kicking our ass?
They're okay. They're being generous. Thank you, everyone, for waiting. The guest who we're trying to get on here with us is, I think, going to be extremely enlightening. So please.
Oh, he is.
Please.
You remember his energy, right?
Oh, like, wonderful.
He I don't know. It was like he was a cloud or something.
Yeah.
Him and he asked us not to mention the names. It's funny, they got to be in hiding. It's not cool. It's not cool that everything else is legal. Not everything, but alcohol, cigarettes, the shit they tried to give Vinny for a suicide attempt. I mean, that stuff was gonna kill him quick. Legal, prescribed. But something that resets your brain, because that's what happens. It's a reset. It's like resetting your computer. Takes it back to its basic operating system. You commune with that system, and then you come back with a deeper sense of. For me, it wasn't really that I knew a bunch of things. I just knew what this thing is. Like I knew how. I don't want to say that this human experience isn't relevant. It's extremely relevant, or else we wouldn't be here. We're doing something as humans, and I believe we are special. That's not to say that there's not 10 million other planets with humans or whatever. I don't know, but in our consciousness, there's something going on. And my belief is that we're here to transcend the human experience, and it's things like bufo, ketamine. Oh,
there he is.
Bufo. He went straight technical.
All right.
So he's going to be blacked out. You're not going to be able to see his face. There he is.
Mr. Bufo.
Bufo alvarius.
which is the
He's
name of the
connected.
toad. It's the name of the toad.
Bufo. You there, Bufo?
Is he muted maybe?
Can you hear me?
Oh,
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Perfect. Yes.
let us know in the comments if you can hear him too, please.
Yeah, sorry about the link. I don't know. I don't know what I'm doing. I know some things and they're probably more important, but
No
sending
problem.
links, not my gig. So
made it.
how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
Really good. How'd your ceremonies go in well, out of Michigan?
Oh, they went
Last
really,
two we talked about.
yeah, they went really good. We had 8 days.
Did you really?
Yep, back to back. So that's the longest we've had in a while with our local team.
Do people do they go simultaneous or is it one session and
For most people, it's one session.
okay. I was
so
gonna say how do you repeat that?
Yeah, well, so we'll book maybe up to 15 people a day. And for most people, they're single individual sessions, but we can also accommodate groups or couples, just like you guys, have.
So that was we talked a little bit about our experience. We wanted to get you on first, and we explained why you have to you have to be anonymous.
Yes.
So which is ridiculous, but America, you know.
Yep, it is where we're at. And it's okay.
So could you explain your experience with where you are as a practitioner and how you encountered it and what it is? And I guess we don't have to skew anybody's beliefs, but at least lay out the information for what this substance is and what it can possibly do for you.
Sure. So my experience, I actually had my first personal journey just a little over a year ago on my 30th birthday last July. And, I kind of went into it. I had no idea what to expect. I've heard about, DMT and 5-MeO-DMT, and I had previously worked with other medicines like ayahuasca, mushrooms, different medicines like that, but never any sort of like this kind of intense, rocket ship type experience. And, I was the kind of guy who, well, before I do this, I need to read a book. So I made sure I read Tryptamine Palace so I could know what I'm getting into before I went into my ceremony, which of course, the experience itself is so ineffable that, words really can't describe it until you smoke it yourself. And so really all I got out of the book was that someone's done it like over 100 times and they're alive. Right. And they could write a book. And so I went and had my experience, met the practitioners, and got over my nervousness, and it was just so life-changing for me. The experience itself, it's very quick, it's very clean. You can be in and out in an hour in driving home, back in your body, back in the world. It's not so much like what you would experience from, these other types of medicines or psychedelics where you have a very long journey and you have the come up, the peak, the come down. It's not 8 to 10 hours like LSD or anything like that. You're really in the space for maybe 20 minutes, and then you start coming back, and you're on the 30-minute mark. And once you start coming back in the room, you can, you look around you, you're back. And then it's just really taking in that healing. And so when you reach that peak, which is essentially right after you're done inhaling the toad secretion, as you exhale, you leave the room. So it's very fast acting. And so, any fear you may have going into it dissipates pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And there's for most people, there's no visuals. It's generally either a, white or black kind of light or void. But maybe around 10% will have some sort of sacred geometry pattern going on, but it's not an NDMT where you potentially see different entities or aliens and have an experience like that. Rather, it's much more of a meeting of consciousness, transcending 3D to 5D, where you're able to shed everything you think you are, all your labels, everything that you think makes you you. And once you shed that, all you're left with is that awareness beneath, which is what we all really are.
Mhm.
And once you get there, and it can be a fight, your ego may fight to, live because it thinks it's dying, but it's really just taking a quick nap. You kind of transcend all that. And suddenly you're merging with everything there is in the universe. It's everything and nothing, all at once. And it's a very deep, healing that many will compare to a near-death experience if they've had one. And if you read, near-death experience reports and stories, oftentimes they will sound very similar to this experience. You just get the chance to do it without, the accident.
Yeah. That's a beautiful way to describe it. It's exactly, nothing's exactly right. We're all individuals. We have our own life experience, but there is that quality. And you said it best. It's what we truly are is this awareness. Who is this that's monitoring my thoughts, right? Who's that?
Right.
Doing that checks, and that's who we are. We think we're the person who's made the misstep or whatever it is, but we're not. That's our truth. And to be able to access that, I know my first experience was with ketamine, psychedelic therapy, and that was my first. Wasn't my first out of body because I've almost died before, but that was my first time from a psychedelic, and I've never been the same since. And this right here, it's almost perfect, for me, because I've done ayahuasca, psilocybin, ketamine. I've had the experiences, but this was like, just get over here, bypass you don't need the pretty visuals or the dark visuals. You don't need, just talk to me. That's what I got from it. Just talk to me. And so I did.
My experience was it didn't feel like work at all. It was every weight, every constraining idea, rule about what it means to exist in your human body, your ego, everything just lifted completely to where you're just your essence and your essence as part of the whole. For me, that's how I experienced it. Like if you look at this window behind me, it's just this blaring white light that you're seeing on the video. That's what it felt like, much like what you said before, the black or the white. Just
yeah, it was you think you have questions, right? And I thought the same thing with ayahuasca. And when I get to this space, if it even exists, I got so many things I want to know. You know it, you are everything. It's really, and it's kind of like religion. You have all these spiritual traditions, and they use words to try to describe that, and you can't. But when somebody's gone through that experience, because there's that similarity, that into the oneness and nothingness all at once. And that doesn't make sense to me 10 years ago. Just stop with that. You know what I mean? Like that doesn't even make any sense.
It just sounds like poetry. And, you can read all these spiritual texts and they all allude to this truth. But until you experience it directly, there's no way to know. Right. And all these different, spiritual paths, especially Eastern, but any of them, when you come down to the core truth, it's this is what, I believe in, what my journey has shown me. And, you can go to a monastery and meditate for 40 years and maybe catch a glimpse of it. Right. Or, if you feel the call, do something like this and it just takes you straight there. It really is, it's the essence that we all are. And our society and everything in this world, it's just this constant illusion of separation. And it's that separation, that causes so much pain and trauma. And this reconnects us to God. It reconnects us to source, our creator, whatever you believe that is. And it really, it's as if your brain was a computer, you're getting a reboot and an upgrade. And you can have other medicines. You may have an afterglow for a little bit. With this, the afterglow, it dissipates with time, but it really is just a new way of operating. And you never really forget it. And most people don't remember much from the experience, like, especially immediately after they do it, after they take it. But things come together and piece back, in the coming days, weeks, months. And there's something different. And you start looking at the world differently, and it really can heal and open up, just childhood traumas, past life traumas. And it may not be like you're visualizing it and remembering it, that way, but it opens it up to, clear and really heal from that. So you can move forward.
Yeah. So my take on that. So I was diagnosed with PTSD, 2013. I'd been carrying it my whole life. I didn't serve in the military. When I was first diagnosed, I said, well, that was my first thing. I'm not military. That's when I learned that it can come from childhood trauma. And, we traced it back through cognitive processing therapy, and where all of our faults lie, where the illusion of separateness lies, all of that is back in our monkey mind, right? It's way back there. It's before we have the ability to process what's right or wrong, to say that any information we're given is right or wrong. We're programmed for this human experience. And so a lot of these other substances, these medicines, they don't try to. Ayahuasca's deeper, psilocybin's deeper. Any psychotropic that you see, it tries to process from the three-dimensional plane, right? And it can't be done because it's all back there in the subconscious. So I had to learn how to access my subconscious. I knew a lot of things for a lot of years. I could chop it up with the best of them on what trauma was and emergent spirituality and quantum physics. And I knew a lot of words, but I couldn't act right, because when I was triggered, I couldn't think my way out of trouble. The flashback was going to happen regardless. And so I had to learn how to get in touch with the visceral field. So the visceral field, I feel it first. I know it's coming. Then I can ask a question. But unless I feel it first. So what Bufo, in my opinion, did for me, and what it probably, I would venture to guess, does for other people, because Vinny went too, my son. And it goes there. That's where it goes. That's why you can't remember anything, because you don't even remember that. So you just are different. And Vinny he can't say how he's different, but I see it. Yeah. I saw it right away. He's a completely, I don't want to say he's a different kid. He's more back to himself than I've ever seen him. And he's going through some stuff, but so he doesn't have the words that I do to go out there and try to correlate what the experience might be. He's just living it, and to see that. And so was Amber, actually. She might have been an angel when she walked in there. I don't know. Got this energy to her. She'll try anything, but yeah, so that's, I mean, if this is truly reset in the subconscious to where you don't even have to think about it, you don't have to do any psychoanalyzation, no cognitive processing therapy, you just come out and the traumatic responses are gone. That's a beautiful thing.
It really is. And it's the pure non-dual state, right? With any of these other medicines, when you see these other visualizations, it's still you and something else, right? It's this other entity, or it's this other, geometric pattern. Whereas it's all one, it's all there is. It's you're everything and nothing all at the same time. You're this table, you're this blade of grass. I am you and you are me, right? It's that type of just intense connection. You're a soul. You're part of the universe. And we see, very regularly, people will come in with various traumas on, just long lists of medications, heavy pharmaceuticals, and we'll work to taper them off if that needs to happen. And then, they'll take this on and they won't need to go back on their medications often. They may need to come back for, more treatments with us every, few months or so. Early is dependent upon the individual, but a lot of folks, they won't need to go back on those pharmaceuticals. They're, depression, PTSD, all these, ailments, they I don't know if disappear is the right word, but it really does heal that, right?
Well, so it doesn't disappear, because whatever we have, whatever information is there, it's there. It's just the response isn't. So there, Frankl talks about the space between reaction and stimulus and response. So the more trauma you experience, the less that space is.
Mm-hmm.
You're real reactionary. And I know for me personally, after I came out of that, I don't have to think so much about. So I know I have 5 daily practices. I fell off those as soon as pandemic hit. It was, and then I got into some other things that were good for me, activism and whatever, that it helped carry me through. But after doing that ceremony, I noticed that I don't have to do those and be concerned that I'm heading for a breakdown, because I just don't. There's no rhyme or reason to it. The only thing I can equate it to is well, I've done a lot of work too, but it was a reset in the area of my brain that I needed reset really bad.
Yeah.
And I've been allowed to experience emotions in a way that I've never been able to experience. Again, I've done some work, but this really it expedited the process big time, and for somebody who understands the process and understands the mechanisms of the brain, to be able to watch that objectively, and even with my family and Ambra, is fascinating. It's beyond fascinating, and it's a crime that this isn't. I don't want to say mandated, because you shouldn't mandate anything, but the Sonoran kids, rite of passage, 13 years old. I mean, it's a crime that what they did to my son in that legalized dope dealing psych ward, what they were going to do to him if I didn't have the ability to decipher the information they were giving me. I mean, that's a form of murder. They were going to permanently alter his brainwaves in a way that he could have never fixed. And if I didn't know any better, but that's legal, and you have to. I like the toad, by the way. That's a nice picture. So I'm not complaining about the toad, but you shouldn't have to hide. You should be able
exactly.
to.
Absolutely. But it's where we're at.
Right.
And we're definitely in a psychedelic renaissance, and we're seeing more and more acceptance and more individuals taking this path, whichever medicine calls to them. I mean, back in the day, you didn't have all these people flying to Peru to do ayahuasca,
right?
So that's fairly new. It was the shamans of the tribes would take it for the tribe. And now you have these retreat centers where people can go fly and take it themselves. So there's definitely a movement towards the psychedelic renaissance, and it really is like all these big pharma, and it's all more, I think, based on control and financial interests rather than true healing. But you are correct. The Siri tribe that we work with, it's a rite of passage at 13. when you look at American children, there is no real like rite of passage ceremony.
No.
Right. You turn 18 and you can, buy a, a lottery ticket, and, there's like certain things like that. 21, you start legally drink, but there's no rite of passage to adulthood here. And I wonder how our society would be different if we had one. Right. Like it's right.
I mean, there are definitely rites of passages that are a part of different religious practices. But a unifying moment that we can all recognize that actually has a spiritual component, or a growth that is visible and acknowledged by the entire community, other than maybe getting your driver's license. So independence, independence is highly valued.
So what is so with their culture, can you speak on that? I'd be interested to know. I mean, is there a crime rate? Is there, what do they experience?
I can't speak too much on the sericulture. I haven't gone to Mexico and I haven't worked with them myself. Outside of the rite of passage, I know, that these toads to them are incredibly sacred creatures. These toads are God. And, they work with the toads, and they treat them with the utmost reverence. And there's a conservatory where they care for the toads and, milk the glands and all of that. I really can't speak to more on their culture myself.
So how was it discovered, toad?
That's interesting as well. It's often thought to be a rather new phenomenon, simply because of how we smoke it, right? You need a glass pipe and a torch lighter, and so it's often viewed as a very new medicine. But there is evidence of 5-MeO-DMT like inside Aztec bowls or vases. Like there's residue. So it's thought to, even go back to early Mesoamerican culture, but we're not sure how they used the medicine, how they were able to, to vaporize it and ingest it.
I'm always curious about those types.
Right. And we never know, it's always an interesting question. Well, who was the first one to think of doing this, right?
Let me scrape this up.
Who milked, this toad secretion and dried it out and then smoked it, right? And it's the same with like ayahuasca, right? There's how many hundreds of thousands of plant and, root and bark species in the Amazon forest, and you're going to take this one vine and one bark and brew it and drink it. Yeah. Right. And it, right. So it's like, well, how did that happen? And, it's, well, the plants told us, yeah. Right. Or the star people told us, or it's, stories like that. And there's a higher intelligence at work.
The right, story on Campbell, right?
Remind me.
So and I only was told this briefly at the last ayahuasca, but so it was a practitioner of ayahuasca. The message was brought to them in ceremony and that's a pretty intense ceremony where you're cutting into the skin and so I thought that was really interesting. I didn't know if there was a similar story, star people good enough, but but that one is dangerous, that ceremony. And he came out and he did it, and lo and behold, right? So there is a higher intelligence at work. When we can give over to that intelligence, we function better. That's what my takeaway in all of these experiences is. The more that I surrender, the more I just give myself over to whatever. I'm not attached to the outcome of any ceremony. I'm not just take away the blocks. That's my intent. Every time I go in, take away the blocks and do with me what you will. Make the lesson as soft or as hard as it needs to be. And, that's what I try to do. And just in doing that, you open a neural pathway that we're not traditionally, we're not raised to just accept, or to, we think we can change our environment. We can change people around us. We point at people, we judge them. And So just going into those ceremonies alone with the proper mindset is a mind changer. It's a mind alterer for most people. I know it was for me.
Well, even just the concept of surrender is so difficult. Vulnerability, so difficult.
Yeah, I mean, and when you get into a space like this, you realize that, well, you're not really that vulnerable because you don't die. You know, you're not going to die. You might not be in this experience anymore, but there's definitely something beyond. I know when I did DMT the first time, and I never have to do it again. I was already spiritual. I got to pierce the veil. When I came out, I said, "Oh, it's real." That's kind of how it was. This was a different experience, a little more profound, because I remember being on the ground, and it just felt like things were being ripped out of my body, not in a violent way. Just there were things that were being torn out, and I was getting lighter. That's how I felt. And then I just started giggling like a child. And I walked I remember walking out towards the trees and just kind of, wasn't really talking to them, but I was, there was some kind of communication going on. So I just knew that I was okay, that everybody was okay. And I wanted everybody else to know that they were okay, because I keep getting the message, you don't have to be so serious. And I just look, go do work, right? But let other people do work in the way they do work. You live and let live. Get out there now. You only get this one life type thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you bring up a good point. Ceremony and intention are really important, and they do make a big difference in whatever medicine you're using, right? Even if I'm working with a medicine on my own, I always have a certain amount of ceremony and intention going into it. With Bufo, because of its nature, we actually, will recommend you really don't need to go in with a specific intention other than to surrender, because it's so intense and it's so quick. Like, that's all you need to do is surrender to it. And the medicine is so intelligent that higher intelligence will give you exactly what you need, however you need it, and it's going to be perfect. With other medicines, you might go within with more specific intentions. But even with, ayahuasca or anything like that, for me, I generally just ask the medicine to guide me, show me, and heal me. And trust that, rather than going in with expectations or I want to, work on this or that it's just going to show me what needs to be opened up and worked with at that particular moment. But it is, an important mindset to have going in. And for our work, we have a prayer that's actually from the Siri tribe that we offer participants to read before they inhale, which really helps set the tone to the ceremony. And many will actually have an emotional response to the prayer before they even smoke the medicine. Yeah, well, people can crack up a little bit and cry, and it really is beautiful, and it really does set that intention.
Is that available online? Is that something we could grab and share with people?
I can find it.
Okay.
It is somewhere. I don't have it handy on me right now.
Something that we could talk about a little bit is the after effects. So what happens afterwards is we all kind of shared the same ideas. For me, when I came out of it, even immediately after, this overwhelming sense of clarity, everything was completely clear. And like you said, we don't need to take everything so seriously. Right? But beyond that, let's say the gift or what you receive from it is these, what we've been calling Bufo moments that reappear. I don't know, once a week, something like that, maybe more, maybe more.
And what I would say is they don't reappear. We just now have access in a way that we didn't prior to the ceremony.
Yeah, it's like a window out to something that we didn't know existed before. So we didn't have confirmation the way that we have it now.
Yeah, so the experience, it really does stay with you for quite a long period of time. Initially, after the experience, there can be what we call reactivations for a couple of days to even a couple of weeks, And oftentimes that will happen when somebody is asleep and entering that deep, REM space where your body is naturally producing its own DMT. Because of course we have DMT in our bodies already. And there's DMT in plants and mammals. It's a very common, molecule. And so it can, after the experience, because you've just, smoked and had this experience for the following couple of days or weeks when you're asleep or, even just meditating or doing yoga, you can find yourself entering that space again. And it can feel just as powerful as your initial experience, especially, during the sleep space. The best guidance is just to surrender to it. It's really the medicine continuing to work with you and continuing to heal you. For me, after my first experience, I had, I think 2 or 3 nights where I had trouble sleeping, but some of it was just trying to like conceptualize the experience, right? And trying to piece it together. Because immediately when you get back, your ego's like, what happened? How can I turn this into puzzle pieces that I can fit together into like a pretty picture? And you really can't. No. Over time, you different, you'll have those aha moments, right? Where for me, different pieces of my life, different situations and instances, even from when I was a child, started like fitting together. You're like, oh, this all makes sense now. And it all led to this moment, and it's all perfect. But you can have those experiences. In fact, I was at a beach this weekend, just, it was late at night. I was meditating, hearing the sound of the waves, and I found myself back in this space. And of course I could open my eyes and I'm at the beach. I wasn't out of my body, but it does happen. It is really a gift. And of course, with time, those dissipate with intensity. And often by the time they leave, if they were overwhelming at first, they'll be old friends by the time they kind of dissipate. But even with that dissipation, you may randomly find one night you have it again. Mm-hmm. It's just less frequently. So it really does.
I love it. It's
yeah. A lot of people
the
do.
most beautiful moment of my life.
It really doesn't do anything to alter or create it takes you back to the truth. It just opens up neural pathways.
And that's what it does. It really does. The gray matter in your brain, creating more neural pathways. It really is a brain upgrade. And just how you end up, whatever you do after that, everything just seems it'll seem often, easier and just less intense. Like everything, for me, everything kind of feels like a game now. I'm like a player in this game, and
that's dangerous for me.
Yeah. But it's kind of like you can start looking into things like simulation theory and the holographic biological simulation type of thing. There's a lot of interesting theories about that. But it can open you up to anything. You might find yourself called to learning how to meditate, yoga, Eastern spiritualities. I mean, you can go from being a staunch atheist to having now this beautiful spiritual connection that for most of us in this Western society, it's always been something external, not within us, and you have to follow these rules and kind of regulations of these different religious organizations who are really trying to just control and disempower us as individuals, when the reality is each and every one of us, we are God. It's not a follow these rules and this external bearded entity that throws lightning bolts up in the sky will it's not that, right? And you suddenly realize that, and it makes life so different, right? Was Ram Dass who said death is like taking off a tight shoe, right? And we live our lives like, most of us, we have such a fear of death. Like what more is there to fear than dying and not fully living this life and this and that. And once you have the gift of experiencing death, before you die, you can come back and truly live. And once you see that death, and I believe the bufo space is what awaits us, when we leave these meat suits. And you see what a beautiful, gift it is. And, it really is something to, be excited about if you can get there. It really makes life in, its current form here, just much smoother and much easier, even with all the craziness that's been going on the last year and a half, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that experience, that breaking down the illusion of separation for however many minutes, because I mean, I don't know, time and space collapses, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
once you have any memory of anything, you've left the non-dual state. Like, so you're back now. So now you have your ego, and I can physically feel my ego creeping back in. I know it's not the ego's constant, it's a pattern. But I feel it coming back, trying to make sense of everything that it needs to make sense of things, that other portion of us, the truth doesn't need to make sense of anything. It is everything, right? So your ego is mine is at odds with this. And any experience that I've ever had, especially early on, I would have to justify it somehow. I would have to intellectualize, and then I would have to go read a book on it. And I would have to be able to explain it to somebody because I'm not going to be crazy. So I'm just, and it really had no value. Well, it has value now because I can talk about it, but back then it had no value because it kept me from doing the practice. Like I was so a big man with my big concepts and my vocabulary around it, but so something like this, what I continue to get from ayahuasca, I've only done this once, and I don't know that I need to do it too much more because it's so profound. But it's do the work. Don't kill yourself. That's when we were driving back. We were talking about the gift of life. People ascribe meaning to a god, or they ascribe meaning to achievements, or they ascribe this right here, this gift that we've been given. I felt that more profound than anything was that live it. It's short, it's short. It's not going to be here for very long, and you're pissing it away with all your having to be perfect and having just get over yourself, man. And I don't know if it said that to you too. Get over yourself, man. But
different words, same message, I guess, in general, which is, there's just so much complexity in our world and layers of ideas. And how are you going to present yourself to the world? What's the vocabulary that you use? What line of work are you in? And, all of the crap small talk that we're always asking people and engaging in, that is like, where are you from? What do you do for work? And all that stuff. And then all of the layers upon that the stories that we tell ourselves about who we are, that's just gone. You don't need any of that. You don't need to complexify. Is that even a word? Complexify your existence with all
right. It's much
incredibly useful and wonderful, but make them useful and wonderful.
Yeah, it's much more simple than what we make it out to be, right? Like we have all these labels, and that's how we identify ourselves, right? Like I have this job, and I'm, a father or a son, and I'm this religion, and I'm this skin color, and we have just like this laundry list of labels, and that's how we identify. And then okay, I'll wear this $2,000 suit to go to work, and that's going to impress people. And it really, it's just our programming, and it's our the societies that we grow up in, the consumerism. And it really is, it's just trying to put a band-aid on like a gaping wound, right? And whatever it is, I think it doesn't have to even be bufo or a psychedelic in general, but it's something that breaks you out of like your daily habits that you don't even know you operate in, right? Maybe it's some sort of like life coaching course experience. It's it could just be you travel the world for a year. Like there's so many different things, but really it's breaking out of that mold and these habits that we just, how much of our daily lives are just these like kind of automated things we do, and we don't even like pay attention to us doing them, right?
We talk so
And
often about neural pathways. That's your big thing. You're always talking about creating new neural pathways.
Yeah, well, for me, without ketamine, without some form of psychedelic, I would have got here eventually through either near-death experience, which was no good for me because I didn't die. So I used that to boost my ego and do more. Like I was always pushing limits as far as I could. So, oh, that didn't kill me, so let me push a little bit further. It really didn't work on the physical plane. I needed that chemical because I was so controlled.
Yeah.
My ego was, and really, I thought I was a tough guy, cool guy, whatever. I created this character when I was in high school called, and I still call him Cool Vince. And it was all a lie. It was all a lie. It just really, and I thought it was tough. I wasn't. I would hit somebody because I was afraid of getting hit. Deathly afraid because it can't, so I was so blocked off because I was so, and you see this in society, people are caught in their defense mechanisms.
Yeah.
They don't even talk to each other. Like it's wait for the trigger. Here's the trigger. Defend, aggress. You know what I mean? So that's how I lived my life. And with ketamine, when I had the experience, because I was deathly afraid of doing that psychedelic dose for some reason. The ego was like, no, you can die, man. I never cared about death. I cared when I was younger, but I reached a point where I had skirted it so many times that I just stopped caring. I was like, well, whatever, And I had an invincibility complex, really. I didn't want to die. I just didn't think I could. It was messed up. But so with my son, I finally took it. I finally took that psychedelic dose and I had the out-of-body experience. I remember standing, me, the higher consciousness self, standing over my son's high chair in the kitchen, looking at me on the couch, and in a real loving way. And this is just how I communicate with others too, but myself, higher self looked at, I don't want to call me lower self, but looked and said, "You're an asshole." And that was it. That's all I needed. Because in that, I knew that I was living wrong, and that's all I needed to know. And what I know now is that the neural pathway of unconditional love opened up, and I started being able to receive what my son was giving me. And that truth, when that neural pathway, that was the deepest truth I'd ever experienced in my life up until Bufo, where, oh, this is the stuff we talk about at Renaissance Unity. This is the stuff that I talk about on the podcast. All this right here, we got to sit in that space and inhabit it. That's the oneness. That's the truth. And once you experience it, it would take a lot of drugs, alcohol, or some other form of compulsion for me to forget that permanently. Like it's not going away. Once you're there and you sit there and you experience it, I don't know how you live the same after that. So for me, it's going to be permanent. I'll never not have that experience. I'll never not. I was changed by ketamine, and the more I go deeper, the more I continue to be changed. Only it's not so extreme anymore because I'm equipped to walk into these spaces. But now it's okay. You're brave enough to go in and ask for answers. We got to be brave enough to take them back and use them, right? Now you got to implement them into society, a profoundly sick society, and that's your work. That's your work.
And it's interesting because it's, you go in with all these questions, you're seeking answers, and you'll get answers, but then you have even more questions than when you started. Right. So you have to get comfortable with not knowing. Is really where the work is. And for me, it was also medicine that really broke me out of my mold. Was probably 6 years ago or so, when I had my first psychedelic experience with a tab of LSD. And that was supposed to just be a weekend buddy hangout session, no idea what to expect. And out of nowhere, I have, this spiritual awakening where I experienced interconnections of all things, all at once. And I didn't know what to make of it because I was always my personality was always very analytical, intellectual, like science, this and that. and I was a staunch atheist for most of my life. It was easy for
Really?
me to, yeah, well, I grew up, I was raised Roman Catholic, and for me,
Oh,
it was easy to just kind of look at that and, the history of the institution, and,
dismiss it all.
even current affairs with that institution, and be like, well, this isn't right. I don't, that can't be what this is. And so, I didn't have any other like paths for me other than that's it. And so I just rejected it. And, lived a rather, angry, sad existence for quite a bit of my middle school, high school, college years. And, I spent a lot of my time just trying to escape my life. I would, smoke pot and play video games and escape into like this, fantasy universe that didn't really exist. And, once I had that experience, my entire world changed with that LSD trip. And suddenly, instead of, playing video games, I'm reading books and exploring yoga and meditation and attending a Buddhist temple. And, my world just shifted so abruptly. And, about 2 or 3 years after that, I found myself in Costa Rica doing ayahuasca,
Nice.
and from there, it's just been, my trajectory has just, continued to, move towards my highest good, whatever that is. And, at some point, life becomes a beautiful dance of flow and synchronicity. And you realize you don't have to chase things so much anymore. And if you're chasing something, it's probably not for you in that way. And, when you're ready, the universe will provide you with, whatever is next for you to do on your journey or your path, once you're aware enough to start seeing the signs. And, this medicine can really get you into that mind space.
Mm.
What I
Where,
found in addition to that was also that letting go of any preconceived notion of what I was supposed to be doing, and
yeah,
letting all other possibilities in on top of it.
Yeah. I know you didn't plan on all this. Yeah, it's been, well, this came at a good time too. COVID's not a good time, but
right.
from a spiritual perspective, this is the type of disruption humans typically have to experience to be called to action, right? It's just a change by choice or trauma.
Yeah.
Not many people wake up in the morning and say, you know what, I'm just going to change everything about myself just because, you know what I mean? It's just that,
Yeah. And
something has to happen.
it is a really difficult time right now, right? But it's also, there's so many people who like, there's more space, right? Like there's less hustle and bustle, there's less, well, I'm just going to keep myself so busy. And this is me, right? So busy with all these different workshops and classes and this and that I'm always sprinting around, and I don't have to like think about things. You're consumed with work or whatever, you're working on. And, I think for many, COVID, if you try to, be in the mindset of finding silver linings in some of this, it's, well, what are you doing with all this space now? It really makes you aware of your thoughts and where you're at. And it's, what do you do from here? And so there is a gift there. If there, the awareness of it is part of it, right? Like, there's always going to be your ego, chatting away in your head, making life more difficult. Like, should I do this? Should I not do that? How am I going to be on this podcast? Right. There's all that mind chatter still like going on. Right. And it's, it doesn't go away. But you eventually develop an awareness of it, and exactly what it is. And it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to do it and it'll be fine. Right. And that's part of that flow.
Even if it's
state.
not, that's right. As far as I go, it's,
yeah.
I just, because you guys were there when Vinny was there, and to hear your son say he wants to take his own life, That's not easy, you know, and
Yeah.
I maybe what's that?
No, I'm definitely agreeing with you. And you
No,
know,
and that could have very easily led to suffering for me if I hadn't gone through if I hadn't prepped myself for that. Um, because you know, a very typical gut response is, you know, one, you're selfish, don't do, you know, so you blame the kid, or you try to, which I did at first, I tried to project my life experience onto his, and because I was able to break a cycle, well, he shouldn't have to experience. Well, that's all nonsense. Like there's no supposed to, period. Like there's, why should my son not have to go through this, and why should I not have to go through it with him? Like that's, we get to put our capes on at the end of this thing.
yeah.
But the alternative is it could go the way I don't want it to, which is the worst way for me. And say he did, you know, I have to make peace with that. If I'm going to walk the spiritual walk, and not just talk it, then I have to look at these difficult situations and I have to say, can I detach from what my ego might think is, I know what the desired outcome is. But there's a part of my ego that believes, well, it shouldn't happen to me, right? No, it should. It did. So if you want life to be anything other than what it is in that moment, you're doing a disservice to yourself in the moment and whatever people are around you. You can't be present. You can't change. You can't learn and grow if you're always wanting things to be other than what they are. And, you know, when you go into this Bufo experience, it shows you the truth of what everything is. So you never have to go back to that space of, I mean, we got our subconscious, our faulty subconscious programming that will come to the surface, but it's easier to recognize now. And I don't have to, me and Vinny got through this, you know, we're still working. We're still working. Amber's working. I mean, you know, that thing, he doesn't know how to come up here and explain what happened to him. But I can tell you the next day when he got back to my house, or it was that night, even Monday, he took his sister's piano and took it down to his bedroom. And I only knew this because she was yelling at him. And so I said, Sophie, you don't even play the thing, let him take it. And I didn't think anything was going to come of it. It's probably a couple hours later, I go down there for something else. I don't know, tell him to go to bed, something. And he's got a tutorial on his computer screen, and he's got a tutorial on his TV screen of different ways to play piano. He's got all the piano keys marked with blue tape. I'm like, I'm gonna leave you alone. I don't even have a question for this right now. And then I come back again later, so it wasn't bedtime yet. Come back again later. I'm like, Vinny, what are you doing? And he's learning piano. Yeah. But it doesn't make sense because like this is a kid who was expressing wanting to die and how worthless life was and how worthless he was to it, saying he's learning piano. I said, well, what are you trying to learn? He sat down and played some horror scores. I'm like, what the, you know what I mean? I'm like, who are you? You know what I mean? And then later in the week, he knocks on our door and he says, it's dinner time. So I said, Vinny, are you ready for dinner? He said, what if I told you dinner's done? And he is scared of everything. This just happened probably about 2.5 years ago. I watched him decline into this fear-based mechanism, and he's scared of everything. So when the doctor said he would see him, but only if he was he felt called to it, and he told me how to present it. Don't convince him. Just say this is what it is. And he either accepts or he doesn't. I thought there was like a 0% chance that he was going to say, yeah, I'll go smoke some stuff, you know, that it's always going to feel like I might die. You know what I mean? Because he does his research, and he said yes. It was an unequivocal yes. And he went there and he did his thing, and he's different now. I don't know that he knows how different he is, but he's different. I see it. She sees it. It's really, I mean, it's an amazing thing. And it really makes me sick that we're in this, but you know what? You're right. There's a psychedelic revolution, and Julie Barron, I don't know if she's still on, but she commented on this. She's I've heard her colleagues call her the matriarch of psilocybin, and she pushed the legality of it in Ann Arbor, and she's real big. That's her big thing. But she was my ketamine therapist at Michigan Progressive Health, and to see things like that happening with this new awareness, to see Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson talking about it, look, there's hope, you know.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I suffered from depression growing up before, you know, my spiritual journey picked up. So you know, I've lived through that myself for quite a bit of my life. And, you know, what we see, and of course there's no one size fits all for everybody, right? But, you know, depression, PTSD, anxiety, substance abuse, when you know, you take this medicine and there's no longer this view or conceptualization of I'm all alone, right? Like there's nobody, you know, who loves me, you know, I'm all alone. Like that was a lot of, you know, my story I told myself growing up. Suddenly you take this and you realize, well, we're all interconnected, and I'm, you know, God playing itself out in like this, you know, body. It really does profoundly change your view on life, because you now have experienced love in a way that's indescribable.
Yeah.
Love that's so different than, you know, just like romantic partnership or friendship or, you know, your family. Like this is just so profoundly different than that. And it really does, you know, for many people, heal whatever that gap or that trauma is. And, you know, it's not a magic pill, right? There's a lot of work to do after. It's really, you know, after you take this medicine and, you know, you get that system upgrade and you clear out that old programming and you heal that trauma, you know, whatever it is for, you know, the individual participant, like, what are you filling that with now?
Yeah.
And what work are you doing now? Like there is, you know, the hard work is you know, many are, you know, nervous or scared going into the ceremony, but the hard work really comes afterwards.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not just the work you're doing, but suddenly you're thrust back into this, you know, totally backward society, and you start seeing through everything, right? Just like the propaganda, the corporations, the, you know, the marketing, just everything, you start seeing it for what it truly is. And, you know, the consumerism and this and that, and, you know, we don't need to go down all of that, but it can be challenging as well. And so the work after it in the integration is the key word here, is also, and that's for any psychedelic, is really where the work is. There are no magic pills, but this is really that profound God experience that deep down we're all, you know, looking for. It's like you're taking a rocket ship home. That's what it's like, is you're going home.
Yeah.
You just don't know. You don't know what home is until you go.
Right. Yeah, it was a homecoming. There was nothing scary about it. There was it was just like, oh, good to see you again. And that, honestly, that happens with me with ketamine almost every time that I go into the, and it's not often, but you know, when I go into the clinic and it's the same thing, except, you know, there you get to play a little bit, right? It's you're skirting that non-dual state. You can see it. It makes sense to you in that space, but you're still aware of what's going on, and you get to play with the mechanisms in your brain. But you know, with ketamine, and I could probably equate this to Toad. Toad's not as accessible, but you know, for me, when I had the experience, I thought it was the ketamine that did it for me. So I just wanted more ketamine. Let me have more of that. That'll change me, you know. And I found out real quick that, yeah, it will change you for the worse, because you can't function like that. You gotta figure this shit out. And it was illegal then. I didn't have anybody to integrate. I had somebody to incarcerate if I got caught doing it. So you know, I kept it quiet. Except for those close to me, and those close to me weren't doing it for the reasons I was doing it. You know, it was recreational, and I'm sitting here with all this information that's coming back to me, and I didn't know what to do with it. So I stuffed some of it back down because it was just too painful. I don't even remember what it was, but there were some things I was like, oh no, we're not gonna deal with that, because let's go over here to the cushy stuff. But it wasn't until I had my first transcendental experience in meditation I was like, oh shit, I can do that. I don't need anything to do that. Now, I'm not practiced like that. You know what I mean? Like I don't have it like that. And I've talked to monks that don't have it like that, to where they can get there consistently. So there's extreme value to something that can take you to that place. We villainize it. Talk about corporations and what you see when you come back. I mean, plain as day, the things that can make you better, it's not accessible to you. It is, but you can go to jail.
We don't villainize it. Those in control villainize it, right? Because it's
right.
You know, with these substances, once you take them, you're far less inclined to, you know, live in the matrix.
Right.
The Matrix really is the movie. It's really a documentary. It's just full of symbolism. And rewatching it after an experience like this, it's just a totally different movie. But it really, you know, it's all these we've been institutionalized since we've been children, right? From school, we go from school to our, you know, often corporate jobs, the government. Like we have all these authority structures, religious institutions telling us how we're supposed to live our lives, and it's often not empowering. You know, it's
you're
we want you to be subordinate, be productive,
you're a sinner,
do what we say, right? And if you follow our rules, like, you know, you can live life at 70 when you retire. You know, you'll find this experience when you die, maybe.
Yeah.
Right, like
you'll go to that good place.
Right. And anything that's fear-based, right? It's either fear or love, right? Like anything that's fear-based isn't, you know, in alignment for our highest good. And so these substances have been demonized. You know, for thousands and thousands of years. I mean, the shamanic tradition is like the original spiritual practice, right? And you know, over the history of our species, we've demonized it so those in power can keep control. You know, if we had the tradition where everybody, you know, were to take this at 13, our world would not be what it is right now.
Nope.
Because we would not accept it, and we wouldn't allow, you know, the 1% of our entire world to, you know, dictate what they dictate to us.
And even the 1%, give them this.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're different.
Yeah. And it's how do we get there? Right. Right. And then even, you know, you'll have pharmaceutical companies who will take these natural plant extracts and try to form them into processed pills and tablets that they can then patent and make money off of. So it's, you know, it's control and it's money, right? It's financial greed.
Well, that's why ketamine is exciting, because, well, they can patent that, right? Psilocybin, they're pretty much lost when it comes to psilocybin or ayahuasca or 5-MeO-DMT. Like you're not going to make a lot of money, and that's going to kill the antidepressant industry. It's done. So they spend a lot of money to make sure that this stuff never gets legal. And we've just started seeing the push on ketamine because they can still make their money on it.
I mean, it's all, you know, how many people go to the doctor, and, you know, healthy life choices would, you know, fix a lot of things, diet and exercise, and, you know, meditation. Instead, here's a pill, and here's 3 more pills for the side effects for the pill we're giving you. It's like that, right? And it really is sad to see. And you know, we're seeing this trend more towards what we're calling this renaissance, but is it going to happen quick enough, I guess, is the question, right? we see the insanity of we're destroying the planet, and just the food we eat is all chemicals, and so many different things. There's so many different layers to just how sinister our world has become.
I think it can be changed. I mean,
Yeah.
because we have this thing that we're on right here. This is
we are the change. We're
very
we are
powerful.
changing it.
Very
And-
powerful tool. And people want to, what humans do is they villainize things they don't understand, or they judge it and they say, oh, social media is all, well, no, it's not, because I came from a very poor neighborhood, and it wasn't until I was exposed to the internet that things like meditation started to come up. Oh, what's this? You know what I mean? I didn't know. Nobody taught us that. And now it's accessible to everybody if they choose to look for it, or if somebody guides them in that direction. It's an amazing thing. And people aren't using it. And the people that are villainizing it and glorifying it are the people that want to control us. Like that's what's going on. But things like this, like I tell my kids, the only thing you got to do in this life is illuminate the space you occupy while you have the blessing of occupying it, right? That's it. Just be better than you were the day before. I don't care what you want to do when you grow up. I care, but you know what I mean? But it's not relevant to me right now. I don't want to see you disrespecting people. I don't want to see you bullying people. And I don't want to see you being lazy. I don't care if you get a C. Doesn't matter. I don't even care if you get a D. If you hate that subject and you can tell me why, cool. I'm good with it. But this is what we do. We illuminate the space we occupy, and we just put information out there. That's what this is. There's no money. We don't take on sponsors or anything like that.
Yeah.
We talk, and we talk to a lot of times to people that have extremely differing views on life, and we break down the semantics of it, and we try to get to the core of what we're talking about. And at the end of the day, we're all human, and we need to transcend this human condition. Like that's what it's all about. Like I don't know what else this is for. If it's not to transcend the nonsense that we're born with, it's it's not a cruel joke. It can't be. But we're one, and then just by our sheer birth, we become dualistic, and that's traumatizing. So we live in a state of trauma our entire lives, and then based on what happens to you in your first 3 years, whether or not you can navigate the trauma healthily is decided. So most people will go through life, and like you said, they'll get to the end of it and wonder where it all went and what was it even for, or you know what I mean. And that's it's not what it is. It's not what it is. And it's not to worship anything. It's not to call yourself an original sinner, and it's not for any of that. It's so obviously not for that. But I don't know. It was obvious to me as a kid. That's why I went the direction I did. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I wasn't following that. That seemed pretty sick to me. And we see the illumination of it now, and what this internet has done. It's just magnified it. Like people think it's different now. No, humans have always been humans. We've evolved. We're actually better than we've ever been. We just see everything now. So now it's easier for us to point a finger and in that illusion of separation, say we're different than them because we do this different thing, or we think this different thing. They're over there. We're over here. We don't have to worry about them. Things like this knocks that out. It knocks it out. And you said it, if everybody knew about this at a young age, and then they got an opportunity to this, you could not perpetuate evil against another person. When you go to that space, like I can't ever see myself want like a white lie. Like it's everything we're taught as kids. And then we find out our parents are lying about that because they do something different than what they told us. You know what I mean? Like,
except you find out everything's a lie.
So it's coming back to the golden rule, right? If you look at the core teachings in most of the religious or spiritual traditions, it's about doing unto others as you'd have do unto you. I mean, it's compassion. It's real simple. we complicate it. We complicate it, and this little toad right here, this little psychedelic toad, has the ability to uncomplicate it for you, and that's it's a beautiful thing. I don't know what you can say about your practice or how people can access more information about the toad, or even get to sit in a ceremony, because I will talk freely about it. It changed us, and you know, we were just getting to know each other in our relationship, and it's nothing I've ever experienced in my life. I know that has a part to doing it. It's also where we were spiritually, but just going and doing that when it was available, massive. We're writing a book, and it's you're not going to be able to correlate it to anything traditional. So I would love to be able to share how.
Right. So, you know, I think the first thing, especially for individuals who have never worked with, you know, a master, you know, teacher of medicine before, you know, like ayahuasca, you call a master plant teacher, Bufo's, you know, not to plant. You know, there's so much propaganda that can lead to, you know, fear of, you know, I shouldn't do this, it's so dangerous. And, you know, there's certainly safety protocols, you know, we follow and other practitioners should follow, right? And, you know, there's certain mental health profiles that, you know, may not be a fit for the work, such as schizophrenia. But overall, for the most part, these medicines are very safe. And so, you know, the first step is if you are feeling that fear or anxiety, you really have to just, you know, start doing some research, right? There's plenty of retreat centers out there and well-known practitioners, you know, for Bufo specifically, you know, there's plenty in Mexico because that's where the toads are from. You know, ayahuasca, there's plenty in Peru, Costa Rica. You know, just start doing your research on the medicine, the various retreat centers, practitioners, and then, you know, really sit with yourself, go outside, hug a tree, meditate, and really, you know, bring out into that quantum space that you're ready for this kind of experience, and really hold that intention. And if you're meant to take the medicine, the opportunity will present itself, right? Like it's how it works. You know, you'll be in a yoga class and you'll talk about it, and somebody like, oh yeah, I've done this before, here's everything I know, or, you know, something like that will happen. And of course, the more, you know, you network with spiritual circles, right? There's various psychedelics groups across the US, and you know, MAPS and different, you know, social groups and things. Like, just start networking with those types of people, and different spirituality, you know, groups, and explore those different paths. And if you hold that intention and you start researching, like, the opportunity will present itself, whether it's you find a retreat center and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go to Peru for a week, or Mexico, or it just, hey, something's happening, you know, there is an underground. I can't really speak to any of those specifics here, you know, on this podcast. But if you're meant to take the toad or any of these other medicines, the opportunity will absolutely present itself. I promise you. It's going into that flow and synchronicity we talked about. But there, you know, going back to that information kind of age that you were bringing up, like, all the information you need is there. There's books on all these topics. You can research everything you need to research on it. And I don't recommend you research too much. You know, as we both mentioned, we read entire books before the experience, and things like you really can't prepare for it by reading books or web articles about the experience itself. You're really just satisfying your ego, trying to make yourself feel a little safer. And if that's what you need, that you know, go ahead and do it. But, you know, just take that plunge and buy that plane ticket, or whatever, you know, however it happens is how it happens. But you know, just release that fear, set that intention, and, you know, learn more about the medicines, and you know, it'll come.
It will.
It's here.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was booking Peru just prior to the pandemic, to the mandates, and I refused to sit with anybody because I was doing ayahuasca there, right? I was, and then I met, you know, the dose guys, right? And I was apprehensive when I went to their place because I'm like, you're white guys, you know what I mean? Like,
right. Yeah.
preconceived notions of and you know, they put this ceremony on, and I was like, holy, it was so, the setting was perfect, right? And they just put so much into it that you felt the energy, and they guided you through the experience, and I'd recommend them to anyone. And he said something that was real profound to me. He said, because they were just you, I don't use it, what do you call it, seekers. So they were learning more about the medicine, and they said that the grandmother spoke to him and wanted to be up north. Makes absolute sense. We got some problems up here, you know what I mean? Like, it makes sense. It makes sense that this toad would want to hop around up here, you know what I mean? Like, we need it more than we live in this pop culture bubble, and I call it a disease. Some people don't like it, but hey, if the shoe fits, it's a disease. I didn't get out of high school till I was in my 30s, you know, with this clique mentality and this and, you know, the risks I took to not be poor again because I grew up poor, you know, the attachment to what I should be because I look this way, and you know what I mean, like all that nonsense stagnated me for the earlier years of my life until I finally said, I'm going to buy that ticket. I don't care if it kills me. Like I didn't want to die, but I was buying the ticket. Come hell or high water, I was going to change. And that's I don't recommend anybody get to that. You know what I mean? If you can make a decision and you trust people and you hear things like this, just go do it. You know, if you're called, like you said, do it.
Well, and do it. But, you know, I will say, make sure you do research who you do it with, who the facilitator is. It is very important. You know, there are well-known facilitators from various medicines who, you know, unfortunately, there's, you know, some scandals, I guess, or lack of a better word, and you know, things like that. And so I definitely recommend, you know, either go with a very well-known retreat center that has, you know, the reputation and the reviews and all that, or, you know somebody who's worked with the facilitator in question that you're looking for, and can, you know, speak to their experience, because it is very important. And, you know, I think for the most part, you know, we're all just doing our best. And, you know, I think facilitators' hearts are pure, but there are, you know, there have been some bad apples, which, you know, are, you can, you know, Google that yourself. That it's just something to be careful of.
Not to scare anybody.
No, not to scare anybody at all.
Everyone listening to this, they know us. So
and chances are, you know, if you're going to some sort of well-known retreat center, or if it's, you know, the underground, you know, somebody who's experienced it, and you're being referred by, you know, an acquaintance or a friend, and you at least know somebody who has experienced it. That's all I'm saying, is just make sure you know, and then ask questions and kind of get to know, you know, your facilitators. Like when we sit with people and we schedule them, you know, outside of, you know, our intake process, when a new participant comes, you know, we have half hour, sometimes even an hour talk with them, just answering questions, and, you know, they get to know us before they even, you know, sit for the medicine. So that is just an important point to mention as well.
Very important. Where did you go in Costa Rica? Did you do Rhythmia?
I was at Soltara.
Okay.
That was probably 2 years ago now.
Okay.
Actually, yeah, about, because I think I had my last ceremony, or my third ceremony, on the Lionsgate portal, which was 8/8. So almost exactly 2 years ago.
Okay.
I was at Soltara, which I highly recommend. They're absolutely fantastic. If you're looking for ayahuasca.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, it really, I mean, you get a little more of like the luxury, with, the kind of the condos with the air conditioning and all that, which can be comforting. Um, and all of the facilitators are Western. There's no language barrier there, but they work with Shipibo shamans. So you still get the shamanic tradition in the culture, which is, very important as well. So I had a very good experience there. And I would definitely recommend them if you're looking for ayahuasca.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody's seeing this camera shake like this, but so is there anything else that you wanted to share? I mean, this has been extremely valuable information. And again, when the ceremonies roll back around, we're in. How many times have you done it? I'm just curious.
I mean, for my own individual ceremonies, I think 5 times. And I started this journey a year ago, specifically with Bufo. Although my spiritual journey's been about 6 years now.
Okay.
But as far as facilitating and serving individuals, I might be somewhere around 300 ceremonies, 350, as far as processes that I've helped facilitate or have experienced.
That has to be fun work. You don't. Do you see a lot of the people again, or?
Yeah. I mean, it's really whatever you need, right? Some people, they come once and that's all they need. Some people will come. We generally have our ceremonies every 3 months, every quarter, about 4 a year, where we have our big, week-long retreats or however long they are. And we'll see people regularly, every 4 months, 3 or 4 months or so. It really just depends. And then some people, will kind of follow the different locations around and like groupies. So it's really what each individual wants. But, there are quite a few people who have sat with the medicine more than once.
Like the Grateful Toad.
Yeah, the Grateful Toad.
Yeah. And there's always going to be that nervousness, right? Even if you've done it once, sometimes it can be more nervous coming back to do it a second time, because now but there really is, you just have to get over that nervousness or that fear, and it's just respect for the medicine. And once you're there, once you exhale and you blast off, like, you're back.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And often, if you had trouble, if your ego had trouble releasing the first experience, right? Because sometimes the ego will be like, no, I don't want to take a nap. And it'll kind of kick and scream and fight. And you can kind of have that initial fight going on internally before you get to that space where you surrender. Oftentimes, that second, third time you do it, it's just much easier to fall into that homecoming space. Because you may not remember the journey, but your soul does.
It does.
Yeah.
Hands down. There's no taking away. That's why quantum, and not to keep us going for too much longer, but the quantum physics and the invention of the fMRI and the technology that we have now that says, oh, maybe those shamanic traditions, there's some truth there. You know what I mean? Like, we can actually prove it. We know what meditation does. We know what happens to the brain when ketamine is introduced and how that affects trauma. We know that. They don't share that information readily. You can get it, you know what I mean? But it's out there. It's out there. It's a matter of time. It's a matter of time when we all blow up. You know what I mean? Like,
science is just starting to catch up with what, many of these spiritual traditions have known for thousands of years, right? I mean, you can look at quantum physics, right? It's starting to explain, what we see in a lot of these different spiritual texts that we didn't have a conceptualization of before. Now you do a brain scan on a monk when they meditate, you see the brain light up, different things like that. Like, we're just starting to really catch up with what we've known for so long. We've just forgotten, right? We're a species with amnesia.
I mean, we are. It's like we're devolved consciousness.
Yeah.
When I did the ayahuasca the first time, did that ceremony, I already know a lot of these things. I believe it. I believe it without a question. And I felt it. I've experienced it. But when I went in on ayahuasca, it was cool because I got to see. I saw everything was a wave function. The people, they weren't really solid. There was geometric patterns. So I didn't take that as a hallucination. I was like, well, no, I'm just seeing the reality of what we're energy anyway. Like at our core, that's what we are. We're light. That's what we are. That's what we stem from. And to have that knowledge and go into a ceremony, an ayahuasca ceremony, and even Toad, it's valuable because I don't have any questions to ask when I get out. I really don't. There's just everything just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And on that note, if you want everything to make sense, start doing your research, and you will get called. Yeah, I appreciate your time, and I'd like to get you on again.
Absolutely.
After the next ceremony.
Okay, absolutely. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to come on here and speak a little bit about what we do. So thank you so much for that. And, this is how we heal the world, is, sharing knowledge and just chatting, right? It's a first step for a lot of people, just sharing this information.
Well, we're advocates, and
yeah.
So we're linked up worldwide, and it's all over the world. It's not here. It's everywhere. The people are fed up with the matrix. So we're advocates, and just give me a call when you're in town, and really appreciated having you on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. It's been a pleasure.
Bufo, right? The name's Bufo?
Yep.
Bufo Alvarius?
The name is Bufo Alvarius.
All right, Bufo. Have a good night.
All right. You too. Bye, guys.
All right, guys. Human condition. I think I said that. I think you know that. So what are we doing next? Oh, next week. Next week we have a practitioner from. Now check this. This is everybody knows my relationship with ketamine, and so there's a retreat. It's the Floresta retreat. It's a ketamine retreat done similar to ayahuasca. It's ceremonial. So 3-4 days. The first one kicks off, I think, right now, actually, in the Catskills. We're going to be posting a link to this group, because they're going to be having them worldwide. And it's this one was a 4-day ketamine retreat under the stars.
This coming weekend, actually.
Yeah, all holistic. The first one happens this weekend. They already have them booked all over the world. They had to wait for the restrictions to let up, but I swear by this. I swear by Bufo. I swear by ayahuasca. Psilocybin. I see the value in all, but ketamine was always the thing for me, because I'm very left and right brain, and it allowed me to play with both sides of my brain, and I could understand it, and it was just better for me. But Bufo, I don't need to do it again. I might, but I would look into this thing we're going to post, and we'll get that prayer up there too. I'll get that prayer from them. Any questions that anybody has out there on these experiences, and where they can go to sit with people that care about injecting. It's not a money thing. It's about putting light into the universe, and they go all out to make the set and setting beautiful, and you feel safe in a place where you're unsure of what's going to happen next. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for putting up with the you guys always do. Thank you. Human condition, we'll have that practitioner from Floresta on next Wednesday, and I think we got Tom Beals, and we got some other people that I saw. Human condition. Have a good night. Thank you.